Senator Ruston.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Human Services, Senator Payne. Can the minister explain to the Senate how the age and complexity of her department's main ICT system makes it difficult to implement reform?
The Minister for Human Services, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Ruston for that question. This is an issue which has been discussed recently, both in estimates and elsewhere. We are running an ICT payment system in the Department of Human Services which is now more than 30 years old. It was in fact built in the early 1980s, and there's some of us in the chamber who can still remember those days when I think the Prime Minister was Mr Hawke. The late great Peter Brock was winning at Bathurst, and it was a very long time ago the Parramatta Eels won a premiership. That system originally delivered $10 billion worth of payments to around 2.5 million people, Mr President. But it has become a critical piece of government infrastructure that is now responsible for delivering about $100 billion of payments to 7.3 million people each year. That equates to about $12 million every hour. It's stable and it's reliable, but it doesn't have the sort of flexibility and longevity that we need in that particular system. To meet today's needs, the original system has been repeatedly upgraded and extended, I'm advised, over 350 times now. And so what we have is a web of interconnected systems with add-ons and attachments. So what should, for example, be a simple update often is one that requires changes to many different parts of the system. So if you want to make much-needed policy changes, they can, through the ICT process, take a number of months to implement. Now, we have a very highly skilled and committed team of ICT experts who work in this area in human services. And in fact, it speaks for itself when I say that some of them, as individuals, have actually worked on this same system for more than 2 decades. But there are very few organisations around the world, Mr President, who still use this type of computer system, and that makes attracting appropriately skilled staff, some of the few who are still familiar with that particular system, quite difficult, and retaining them is also a significant challenge, Mr President.
Thank you. Minister. Senator Ruston, a supplementary question.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. Can the minister inform the Senate how the current ICT system creates extra work and impacts on staff and customers?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. Notwithstanding the efforts that have been made to bring the system into the 21st century and dragging it through the 20th century, in fact, what that 1980s foundation does is to make things needlessly complicated for staff, for government and in fact for our customers on a number of occasions, largely because it's built around individual payments and not around the person or their family and their particular circumstance. So if you're a customer who starts a new claim, even if you're an existing customer, the current system treats you as a new customer. So you are required to provide all of your details again, even if they've previously been provided, and it does build a certain level of frustration amongst both staff and customers. What we would like to do is to be able to deliver seamless digital services. They're commonplace in the private sector, and there's a certain expectation amongst customers that that's what they should receive. If you want to order online, you can often track your delivery. You can't do the same necessarily with your payments.
The time for answering the question has expired. Senator Ruston, final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Will the minister advise the Senate what the government is doing to improve the current ICT system?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President, and I do thank Senator Ruston for that question, which we did have an opportunity to canvass briefly in the estimates process, Mr President. What the government is currently doing is considering a business case to replace this current system. We have made an enormous amount of progress with a suite of digital apps and with online services, but it is a difficult process, and the current system no longer meets the expectations of customers, as I said. If we had an appropriately modern ICT system, that would definitely improve service delivery. It would remove the ongoing cost to taxpayers, which some of us care about, not those opposite obviously, but some of us care about, and it would also increase our ability to implement reforms. We would ensure, Mr President, that our welfare system as it stands is able to interact properly and seamlessly with other Commonwealth Government departments, which, of course, my colleagues have every right to expect in 2015 and in the years going forward. It would reduce the red tape burden on customers, Mr President,
Thank you, Minister.
on staff
the time
and other
for
government
answering
agencies.
the question